Western Spring Television. Ours it is.
Good evening and welcome on Spring Global on Western Spring Television. Now the headlines. Controversies as petroleum marketers direct members to suspend oil operations across Nigeria. Rescue operations continue as death toll following earthquake in Turkey and Syria rises to over 5,000. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak reshuffles government. My name is Okoyemuni. We begin in Nigeria as the Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria, IPMAN, has directed members to suspend all operations across the country. In a statement today by IPMAN Chairman Mohammed Kulu, the marketers were also ordered to suspend payment of ordering products from source until further notice. The association said the decision followed the critical situation as it affects their sourcing and selling of petroleum products at a loss and the action of the authority. Meanwhile, National Controller Operations, IPMAN Mike Oshatui, has described reports that its over 30,000 members will be shutting down their filling stations as fake news. Mr. Oshatui said the memo to members, which emanated from the chairman, IPMAN Borno chapter, Mohammed Kuluwa, earlier today, asking all its members in the state to suspend services, was a wrong move. In the meantime, President Muhammadu Buhari has met privately with the chairman of the Nigerian Governors Forum, Aminu Tambuwal, and the chairman of the Progressive Governors Forum, Atiku Bagudu, over the scarcity of the 200 naira, 500 naira, and 1,000 naira notes. Also in attendance at the meeting was the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, Godwin Emefiele, chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, Abdul Rashid Bawa, as well as the chief of defense staff, General Loki Irabo. The meeting held at the President's office at the State House, Abuja. None of the participants at the meeting agreed to speak to the media, but the presence of the CBN governor, however, gave indications that the meeting was organized ostensibly to discuss the cash swap policy, which has for days elicited public outcry, particularly from the governors. Almost all the branches of Zenith Bank located on Lagos Island have been shut down from rendering any form of services to its customers, including the head office in Victoria Island. It was gathered that they were shut down to forestall further attack on the bank's buildings and on staff as a result of the frustration its customers have been going through due to the non-availability of the newly redesigned Naira notes. The new cash withdrawal limits rules as well as largely non-functional automated teller machines, ATM. Yesterday, some Zenith Bank's branches in the Lekki-Ajah axis of Lagos already closed shop following attacks on two of the branches. A viral video online shows staff escaping through the bank entrances, with some scaling fences to escape mob attack. The situation was further compounded by the collapse of the bank's internet network, which also made it almost impossible for customers to carry out internet and online banking activities as well. Outside Nigeria, an international aid effort is being stepped up in southern Turkey and northern Syria following a huge earthquake that has killed more than 5,000 people. Rescuers are racing to save people trapped beneath the rubble after thousands of buildings collapsed in both countries. Meanwhile, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has announced a 3-month state of emergency in 10 provinces worst affected.
3 children being pulled from the rubble in the aftermath of one of the strongest earthquakes to hit Turkey and Syria since 1999. The devastating earthquake coursed through southern Turkey and northern Syria, leaving in its wake destruction and the death of more than 5,000 people. According to Turkey's head of disaster services, Yunus Sezer, those injured are numbered at more than 15,800. Rescue process has been a somewhat Herculean task in light of the cold weather in the region, making it more difficult to rescue trapped survivors. It was reported that former Newcastle United and Chelsea forward Christian Atsu was trapped in the wreckage of a building yesterday. Atsu has now been pulled out of the rubble alive, according to his manager. Atsu, who is from Ghana, plays for the Turkish side Hatayspor, a club based in Antakya, one of the cities hit hardest by yesterday's earthquake. However, the club's sporting director, Tena Severt, remains trapped beneath the rubble. Following an international appeal for help by Turkey, countries including the US, China, Pakistan, and South Korea have responded by sending rescue teams and medical aid to assist in the recovery of survivors and rescue process of trapped persons. Others, like Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari, commiserated with the governments and people of Turkey and Syria, especially those who have lost family and friends. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization is sending emergency medical teams to Turkey and Syria to help the injured and vulnerable.
We have activated WHO's network of emergency medical teams to provide essential health care for the injured and most vulnerable. WHO is dispatching 3 chartered flights to both countries with medical supplies, including major surgical trauma kits from our logistics hub in Dubai. We will work closely with all partners to support authorities in both countries in the critical hours and days ahead and in the months and years to come as both countries recover and rebuild. To our sisters and brothers from Turkey and the Syrian Arab Republic, we all stand with you in this moment of unspeakable grief. This is a moment when we must come together in solidarity as one humanity to save lives and alleviate the suffering of people who have already suffered so much.
A Turkish journalist based in Istanbul, Ibrahim Askologlu, has said that people who remain trapped under the ruins have been sending him and other journalists voice notes, videos, and live locations. Widespread internet outages caused by the earthquakes have been reported by internet monitoring group NetBlocks in areas of southern Turkey. Some of the worst affected cities include Osmaniye, Hatay, and Adıyaman, the group says. As rescue efforts continue amid heavy rain and snow, the WHO estimates that as many as 23 million people across Turkey and Syria are exposed, while the fatality figure may reach 20,000 in the coming days.
In the United Kingdom, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has appointed Grant Shapps as the new Energy and Net Zero Secretary in a shake-up of government departments. The former department, which covered business and energy, has been broken up as part of the reorganization. Greg Ant has replaced Nadeem Zahawi after the former Tory party chairman was sacked over his tax affairs. A promotion also comes for Lucy Fraser, who will head a streamlined Department of Culture, Media and Sport. Mr. Sunak's top team of ministers will meet in the coming hours to discuss the changes. Opposition parties say reorganizing government departments will cost taxpayers millions of pounds and suggest Mr. Sunak's reshuffle as a sign of weakness. But the government says the changes will help departments focus on the Prime Minister's priorities. To the Russia-Ukraine war, Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky has called for an end to the spread of rumors or any other pseudo-information that could undermine unity. Mr. Zelensky disclosed this in an address to Parliament intended to end speculation over whether Defense Minister Oleksiy Reznikov will be removed from his position. Mr. Zelensky said his administration is taking personnel and institutional steps at various levels in the defense and security sector that can strengthen Ukraine's position. It will be recalled that on Sunday, David Arakhamia, a senior lawmaker and an ally to Mr. Zelensky, said Mr. Reznikov will be replaced after a corruption scandal at the ministry. Meanwhile, Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson says he's ready to restart negotiations over its application to join NATO as soon as Turkey was. Finland and Sweden sought NATO membership shortly after Russia invaded Ukraine last year, but Turkey has yet to approve what must be a unanimous process. Ankara suspended talks last month as tensions rose following protests in Stockholm, where a far-right politician burned a copy of the Quran in front of its embassy. Mr. Christensen disclosed this in a news conference during a visit to Estonia's capital, stating that the first thing needed to do is calm down the situation. He stated that it is hard to have good talks when things are literally burning. Last week, Turkey said it looks positive on Finland's application, but does not support Sweden's ambition. Israeli forces have killed a Palestinian teenager during a raid in the West Bank city of Nablus, a day after Israel killed 5 Palestinians in Jericho. The Palestinian Health Ministry confirmed the incident today, stating that 17-year-old Amjad al-Hashak was killed by a bullet in the face fired by the soldiers during the raid. However, the Israeli army described al-Hashak as a gunman who had fired on troops. The 17-year-old is the latest casualty in what is already one of the most violent periods in the occupied West Bank since 2002. The total death toll of Palestinians killed by Israeli forces since the beginning of this year has reached 42. In Asia, a ban on Wikipedia has been lifted in Pakistan 2 days after it was imposed over alleged blasphemous content. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif yesterday ordered the country's telecom regulator to restore the online encyclopedia with immediate effect. Mr. Sharif noted that the blocking the site in its entirety was not a suitable measure to restrict access to some objectionable content, stating that the unintended consequences of the blanket ban outweighs its benefits. Also, in a statement, the Information Minister, Mariam Arazeb, said a committee has been constituted by the government to review the decision to ban the website, as well as matters related to other online content. You're watching Spring Global on Western Spring Television. We'll be right back after this break.
The 1914 Amalgamation Treaty is synonymous to the birth of Nigeria. Frederick Lugard, a British Army captain and an outlaw who struck gold in Africa, became the instrument used by destiny to make it happen. The amalgamation of Nigeria was designed for economic reasons by the colonial administration to offset Northern Protectorate budget deficit by Southern Protectorate surplus returns. The amalgamation had ab initio created imbalance in the economic, political, political structure of Nigeria and was responsible for the persistent hiccups and the efforts to forge a united country till today. Nigeria's amalgamation was labeled as the mistake of 1914 by native northern conservatives who neither wanted it nor contributed anything significant to its sustenance. Western Springer Television identifies with Amalgamation Treaty of 1914 as a watershed event in history.
Welcome back on Spring Global on Western Spring Television. Now to the rest of our stories. Australia and New Zealand talked up their relationships with China at the joint Prime Ministerial News Conference today, the latest sign of strengthening ties with their biggest trading partner. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and his counterpart Chris Hipkins said they discussed climate change, security, migration and economy at their meeting in Canberra. Mr. Albanese said he was pleased by the productive video meeting between Trade Minister Don Farrell and his Chinese counterpart yesterday, where it was agreed that Mr. Farrell would soon travel to Beijing. He said that the two countries' position on China is clear, noting that they will cooperate where they can, will disagree where they must, and will engage in based on their national interests.
Prime Minister, this year, China is an incredibly important partner for New Zealand, a very important trading partner and a partner in other areas as well. That doesn't mean there aren't going to be areas where we disagree from time to time, and we'll continue to voice our disagreements with China when that happens, and we'll always continue to strive to strengthen that ongoing relationship.
That we'll cooperate where we can, we'll disagree where we must, and we'll engage in our national interests. And I'm very pleased that yesterday the Trade Minister, Don Farrell, had a very productive meeting with his counterpart from China. China is an important trading partner for Australia. The trade to China is more than the trade figures value than the next three highest trading partners combined.
North Korea says it will expand and intensify military drills to ensure its armed forces are prepared for any war. The decision came at a meeting of a Central Military Commission of the ruling Workers' Party yesterday, chaired by leader Kim Jong-un. According to local media, top of the agenda was the issue of constantly expanding and intensifying the operation and combat drills of the Korean People's Army. The Commission's meeting took place with North Korea widely expected to stage a military parade tomorrow to mark the founding anniversary of its armed forces. In South America, Ecuador President Guillermo Lasso has accepted defeat in a referendum on allowing extradition for organized crime, among other reforms. Results from Sunday's voting worsened the political difficulties of Mr. Lasso, who has struggled to contain rising insecurity, protests by indigenous groups that have hurt the economy, and widespread violence in prisons. The extradition referendum, one of 8 reforms on the ballot, would have allowed Ecuadorian suspects to be sent abroad for trial on drugs and weapons charges, among others. But 51.45% of votes had opposed the measure, the Electoral Authority said on Monday after the contents of more than 96% of ballot boxes had been counted. Mr. Lasso, commenting on the election results, said it would continue to fight drug trafficking and keep working to improve social conditions. Brazil's federal police carries out fresh raids as part of an investigation into the January 8 insurrection, which supporters of former far-right President Jair Bolsonaro stormed government buildings in Brasilia. Police, in a statement, said they are serving 3 temporary detention warrants, 1 preventive arrest warrant, and 6 search and seizure warrants in the federal district. The new raids represent the 5th phase of an operation launched last month, aimed at identifying people who participated in, funded, or fostered the riots in which a mob invaded and ransacked the Congress, Presidential Palace, and Supreme Court. Police did not disclose the names of those targeted in the raids, but said they were being investigated for the crimes of violent abolition of the rule of law, coup d'etat, qualified damage, criminal association, incitement. Elsewhere, landslides in southern Peru have left at least 15 people dead, 20 others injured, and 2 persons are still missing. The Directorate of the National Civil Defense Institute in the Arequipa region, where the mud and rock slides began on Sunday as a result of torrential rains, confirmed development, warning that the toll from the disaster could rise. According to a bureau for Peru's Ministry of Health in the mountainous town of Secocha, where the landslide took place, 20 more people were treated for minor injuries. The Ministry of Health stated that to address the aftermath of the landslide, it would send 2 brigades made up of doctors, nurses, and mental health professionals to the area, as well as 150 kilograms of medicine to the region. The Peruvian army has also deployed helicopters to the region, transporting humanitarian aid, drinking water, and sandbags to the emergency site. In North America, the Mexican government said it is opposed to a possible restart of a U.S. immigration policy known as Remain in Mexico, which required asylum seekers to wait for U.S. hearings in Mexico. President Joe Biden has sought to end the program, which had been introduced by the Trump administration and is currently suspended. But U.S. states such as Texas and Missouri filed a lawsuit to keep the program active, and in December, a U.S. judge paused Biden's attempt, saying the Department of Homeland Security had failed to adequately explain why the policy was ineffective and should be scrapped. Mexico's foreign ministry did not state its reasons for its opposition, but activists argue the policy, officially called Migrant Protection Protocols, leaves migrants in dangerous border cities where they face threats of kidnapping and extortion. In business, United States House Speaker Kevin McCarthy has called on President Joe Biden to agree to compromises and spending cuts as the two remain deadlocked over raising the nation's $31.4 trillion debt ceiling. Republican McCarthy made a call yesterday before Democratic President Joe Biden is set to give the annual State of the Union address to a joint session of Congress later today. The White House has said Mr. Biden will discuss federal spending cuts with Republicans, but only after the debt ceiling is lifted, while McCarthy has said Republicans will only lift the ceiling if Biden agrees to spending cuts. However, Mr. McCarthy called on the president to commit to finding common ground on a responsible debt limit increase, adding that finding compromise is exactly how governing in America is supposed to work and exactly what the American people voted for just 3 months ago.
Cuts to Medicare and Social Security, they are off the table. Defaulting on our debt is not an option, but neither is a future of higher taxes, higher interest rates, and an economy that doesn't work for working Americans. Debt limit debates have been used for nearly every successful attempt to reform federal spending in living history. Why? Because the problem only gets solved when both parties come to the table. But don't just take my word for it. Here's what then Vice President Biden said when he negotiated a debt limit increase with House Republicans in 2011. You can't govern without negotiating, he said. Those are his words. That's what his sensible standard. And House Republicans are following it now.
And now talking sports, Manchester United manager Erik ten Hag says he does not think the club have a chance in a legal process if they appeal the red card shown to Casemiro against Crystal Palace last weekend. After a lengthy VAR check, the Brazilian was sent off following a brawl between both sets of players, where he placed both hands around the neck of Palace's Will Hughes. Speaking before the first of 2 matches against Leeds this week, ten Hag said the midfielder's absence would not be used as an excuse if things do not fall in their favour. Ten Hag also confirmed that Martial, Antony and Scott McTominay would miss the first game against Leeds, which could open the door for a full debut for January signing Marcel Sabitzer.
So I'm the manager. I always have to play with the players who are available. And we have a squad. We have many good players in that squad. Also, who are not always playing start 11, so others get the chance, and I have to do it. And I have to, after the game, I can't say Casemiro is not there, Anthony Martial is not there. No, we have to win, and this squad is all players in Man United capable, so they have to perform tomorrow, and we have to win the games, no matter who's.
Before we end Spring Global, here's a recap of our top stories. The Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria, IPMAN, has directed members to suspend all operations across the country. An international aid effort is being stepped up in southern Turkey and northern Syria following a huge earthquake that has killed more than 5,000 people. In the United Kingdom, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has appointed Grant Shapps as the new Energy and Net Zero Secretary in a shake-up of government departments. You can follow us on our social media handles on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Western Spring Television. You can also watch us live on our YouTube channel at Western Spring Television. I am Okpayamioni. Thanks for watching.